speak on any of the items today that doesn't have their name on the list, that'd be item number 2 and item number 7, I think. 4. Rent Safe and item number 2, Housing Now. Please come and see the clerk and get your name on there, or you can always indicate when we're in it that you'd like to address the committee. Thank you. We'll start shortly when we have a few committee members here.
Good afternoon. Would members of the Planning and Housing Committee please report to Committee Room 1 for quorum?
Committee members, report to Committee Room 1, please. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Would members of the Planning and Housing Committee please report to Committee Room 1 for quorum?
We do.
Welcome back, everybody. We're going to start. Thank you. If I could get everybody's attention, we'll resume the meeting and start with the deputations on item 10.2, Housing Now. Christina Blizzard. Good afternoon, Christina. You have 5 minutes.
Hey, good morning. Oh, sorry, I guess it's good afternoon. My name is Christina Blizzard, and I'm a resident at 757 Victoria Park Avenue, MTCC 606. First of all, I just want to say how disrespectful this committee has acted towards us. We were number 2 on the agenda, and we were told to be here for 9:30. It's now 4 hours later we get to speak, and there's an awful lot of empty seats around the table. So I don't think that's a really respectful way to treat constituents or taxpayers in the City of Toronto. But anyway, I'm here to speak of my concerns about the zoning changes you're proposing to the Green Pea parking lot at Victoria Park Station. This lot is directly to the north of my building. The process has been deeply troubling to us. Our former councillor was less than transparent. When we called a town hall discussion about this development before the last election, she told us there were no plans for the development of this lot, even though there was a website with detailed plans. Suddenly after the election, what we had questioned earlier became a reality, and signs went up informing us that it would be developed. Our concerns about density were marginalized and dismissed. That is not the kind of government we should expect from City Hall. Why were you so fearful to tell us what you were planning? It's almost as if the city is embarrassed about what it's doing and doesn't want local residents to know what you've planned for our neighbourhood. This proposal keeps growing in size. On this small postage stamp size space, you propose to build one 22-story building and one 11-story building. We were originally told there would be 450 units. This summer, suddenly it grew without notice to us to 508 units. This is not about NIMBYism. We have everything in our backyard already. We have Crescent Town. We have a large concentration of TCHC housing at Teasdale Place. There is 10 Macy, Cambridge Place, and a great deal of other low-income housing. A May 2017 Toronto Central Lynn report shows Oak Ridge already is a high-density area with high social needs, low continuity of services, and other social deficits. The report expressed concerns about the few health providers in the area and an issue of equity and access to those services, including to Michael Garron Hospital, formerly known as the Toronto East General. Yet you're going to add 1,000 more low-income people to that population with no plan for more health services, for community centres, recreational facilities, or services for seniors or for schools. The City of Toronto has itself identified Oak Ridge as a neighbourhood in need of improvement. Statistics Canada and City Stats show a neighbourhood that has a high percentage of residents of low income, high unemployment, and a larger than average number of people whose first language is not English, who are recent immigrants, and who require support services. Researchers at St. Michael's Hospital Centre for Research on Inner City Health, and adapted by work done by the World Health Organization, ranked Oak Ridge 135th out of 150 communities in this city, the 5th worst neighbourhood in Toronto, ranked lower than Regent Park. This is based on health, education, and social needs as judged by the WHO, yet the city seeks to overburden this community with even more needs. Nothing in any of your reports indicate you are going to provide any more social services apart from a daycare. We all understand the need for affordable housing. However, this development is not sustainable in a community that already has deep social needs and is constantly shortchanged when it comes to resources. Our building is not a luxury condo. The people who live at 757 are people of modest means. Many of them are seniors, such as myself. Many of them are women, such as myself, living alone. We have a high number of disabled people. This is about overdevelopment and a determination to build housing, no matter what damage it will do to the neighbouring buildings and to the existing community. Your own report states the Toronto District School Board has concerns over space at the two schools, Oak Ridge Junior School and Samuel Hearn Middle School. You say you will have to put up signs informing people their children may not be able to attend the neighbourhood schools. So that will add even more to the chaotic traffic congestion we experience right now as schools pick up and deliver children. You say you're building here because it's close to the subway, yet the Bloor Danforth subway is already over capacity. You can't get a seat westbound
I'm going to have
Victoria
to ask you to
Park.
wrap up, Christina.
Sorry?
I'm going to have to ask you to
I'm
wrap
sorry,
up.
I've waited 4 hours.
I understand, but these are the rules.
You're also planning another large development at Warden Subway, so that will mean there'll be even fewer
Thank
spaces
you.
by the time the train reaches
Thank you.
Victoria
Any
Park.
questions of the
How do you
deputant?
expect to accommodate
Christina,
all
you're
those
going
people?
to, we have 5 minutes.
I have waited 4 hours.
I understand, ma'am, that this is the rules. Christine, Councillor Fletcher has
I'm just asking if you have one other thing to say, because you have to stop speaking. If you'd like to leave us with one thought, Christina.
Okay. No, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Gail Weiser? Weiser.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Gail. Thanks for joining us. You have 5 minutes.
My name is Gail Wazer, and I live in a condominium building at 757 Victoria Park Avenue. I am an owner, and I'm also the president of the board of directors. Our building is about 36 years old in the neighborhood, and we have 210 units. Our residents cover the spectrum from families with young children to senior citizens. Some of our residents are adults with disabilities. We have followed closely the progress of the proposed development. We have attended the community meetings, and we hosted a city and Create TO staff at our building for a town hall. Our residents at that time had a chance to express their concerns and ask questions. We know that right now you are working with a conceptual model for the development, and this will change next year to actual site plans and construction processes. We have numerous concerns about the proposed development, although some concerns reflect close to home because we're right across the street from the development. Others concerns encompass our community neighborhood. Our first concern, and I'm going to talk about 2 of them on behalf of our residents, is traffic and safety. Denton is basically a 1-lane road in each direction. Our driveway is about 25 meters from the Victoria Park Denton Avenue intersection. So we're not too far from it. You turn the corner and you almost have to come into our driveway. From our driveway level, Denton goes up an incline to the intersection at Victoria Park. In wintertime, icy conditions can make it very hard to navigate up the hill. Our driveway, for us, is the only access point to our building for our residents and our visitors. Visitors include not only resident visitors, but also contractors and numerous care workers. Service trucks such as delivery, moving, garbage, and recycling enter and leave via Denton. We have regular Wheel-Trans service to our building. The traffic along Denton is busy now, particularly in the AM and the PM peak hours. Every day, hundreds of TTC buses. I think we have about 10 bus routes and a community bus being serviced at Victoria Park. They enter via Denton. Some outgoing buses turn south, turn on to Denton to travel along to Pharmacy. Cambridge Place tenants are entering and leaving their high-rise onto Denton, and then some travel west on this street. We have school buses, service trucks to the surrounding high-rise buildings, and so on. If the TTC has train service issues, then shuttle buses can back up very quickly, lining Denton Avenue, blocking our driveway and sitting in the TTC lot, all the while with their engines running. It was hard on November the 3rd, 2019, when this happened, and it was dangerous to navigate the road safely. And right now the commuters enter and leave via Victoria Park Avenue. Key point is Denton Avenue, particularly on our neck of the woods, is a very busy street. The model shows the access point for the 777 Victoria Park development as Denton Avenue, across the road from our driveway. Denton Avenue will access the underground parking as well as the service court. The access to the forecourt, however, is on Victoria Park. Traffic is only going to become chaotic. Our residents and enter and leave from Denton. Across the street, the residents of 777 will be entering and leaving Denton. A study in the divisional reviews, the Transportation Impact Study, states that just resident use from those buildings when they're built is expected to generate between 105 and 125 two-way auto trips in the AM and PM peaks hours. Add to that all the traffic that I've mentioned before. The real concern is that more cars and trucks will be added trying to maneuver Denton in an area not too far from the traffic lights and the TTC bus entrance. Our driveway and the proposed driveways for the residents living at 777 and for the service trucks, they're very close in proximity to each other, and all driveways are sandwiched between the intersection and the TTC bus entrance. Key point, traffic on Denton Avenue, particularly the section between Vic Park and Macy, will be chaotic. We're concerned about safety. Pedestrian safety is critical. People from the high-rise buildings in the neighborhood walk across and along Denton at various places to get to and from the subway station. Some go through the commuter parking to get to the main entrance of the subway. Others illegally enter and leave through the incoming bus lane off of Denton. Once construction starts, the Green P lot will be gone. Should the TTC look at reinstating a subway entrance off Denton Avenue? As Christina mentioned, Denton is a school route, so we're concerned that there's going to be heavier traffic. The big takeaway, and that's the best, most practical, safest solution, is to move the access point for the development to Victoria Park Avenue. It's certainly a feasible alternative to the disastrous decision to have the ingress and egress off of Denton Avenue.
Thank you. That was good. Okay, any questions of the deputant?
Yes.
Councillor Bradford.
Thanks for coming down and speaking with us. Did you have a chance, you attended the public
Yes.
meeting close by. Were you able to share some of this feedback with the staff at that meeting or provide your comments to staff?
We had representatives from our building, so these are common concerns that we've been talking about.
Did staff receive this via an email or in person, that feedback? I just because you're not the first person to mention the ingress egress off Victoria Park versus Denton. I've heard that as well. I just wanted to make sure that was communicated with staff also.
I think some residents have written letters.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you. Councillor Fletcher. Oh, one more question. Don't go yet. Councillor Fletcher.
I'm quite familiar because I do go to Dentonia Park.
Okay.
Golfing, and I'm sure I've seen your building. But this, as you are aware, is the zoning, and the site plan part comes later.
Yes.
Where all of those fine details, garbage, on and off site and everything can be more finely tuned.
Yes, and the other one I wanted to talk about was parking and transit, so that would be something to...
Which is also part of your site plan, once this is agreed to rezone that.
Yes, we are
I
aware
know you're
that
fully
you will
engaged in
continue.
that.
There'll be
Yes.
community meetings, there can be more input.
So you're not saying you're against that, you just want to make sure it works for all the rest of the neighbors?
We have concerns, as Christina said, about the development in many ways, and I'm just addressing those, yes.
You're concerned about ingress, egress, transit.
Other things, too.
Okay, like what?
We can talk about, I said, parking, we can talk about transit. We're concerned, as someone else might speak about, disruption to the water table and things like that. We're concerned about adequate facilities in the area.
Just remind me, this is a transit, is this not the transit station, Victoria Park?
Yes.
Transit station? Okay, thank you.
Next, we have Cheryl Middleton. Thank you, Cheryl. Good afternoon.
You're welcome. I'm a unit owner at 757 Victoria Park, and I'm here to speak about our concerns as to the impact the building at 777 will have on the structure of our building. Shortly after the TTC renovated the Victoria Park station, we experienced groundwater seepage into our P2 parking level. And in order to clearly set out our concerns, I want to refer to the studies that were carried out for Build Toronto by EXP and WSP. And the first study I'll refer to is a geotechnical study prepared by EXP that states that as excavation for the proposed structures will extend below the groundwater table, EXP recommends it be retained to review the shoring design and monitor installation and testing during excavation, as this is necessary not only to anticipate when and if additional support is needed, but also to provide data to meet claims from adjacent property owners. In this regard, it's essential, the study states that it's essential that detailed precondition surveys be made on adjacent buildings. The study also states that vibrations generated from construction must be monitored to ensure they're not exceeding safe limits, causing ground settlement and adversely impacting existing structures in the vicinity. And the study also states that no excavation be carried out before the groundwater is depressed, and dewatering should run continuously until the permanent drainage system is in place, operational, and confirmed to be effective. We're really concerned that the dewatering carried out at 777 will cause groundwater seepage into our P2 parking level, or in the alternative, lower the groundwater level beneath our building to cause a sinkhole. We're also concerned that the construction vibrations may cause cracks in our walls or our shear walls. So we therefore ask that the city provide a detailed precondition survey or baseline building sciences assessment of our building at its expense before construction begins at 777, so we have findings to which both parties agree. We also request the city provide us an opportunity to review, provide input on, and be copied on all reports, documents, and correspondence related to geotechnical monitoring on the project. And finally, to provide real-time vibration, settlement, and groundwater monitoring information to our board of directors. The next one I'll refer to is the Hydrogeological Investigation prepared by EXP that suggests that a caisson wall be used to prevent groundwater seepage into the excavation area. We have been advised that the installation of a caisson wall could cause seepage into our building. Under certain conditions, dewatering activities can also cause settlements due to an increase in the stress of the dewatered soil. In this regard, we request that the city provide us with its assurance that the installation of the caisson wall and dewatering activities will not impact our building, causing groundwater seepage or settlements. And if these activities do negatively impact our building, that the city undertake to rectify same at its expense. The next study I'm going to refer to is a stormwater management report prepared by WSP. Stormwater runoff is going to be stormwater runoff pre-construction serviced by Victoria Park Sewer System. Stormwater runoff post-construction will be stored in a cistern which holds 235 cubic meters, which is 662,000 gallons of water. And the cistern is located at the southeast corner of the site immediately across the street from us. So failure of the cistern for managing stormwater, and that would be bursts, leaks, or overflow, would likely occur or become obvious during a significant rainfall. And any potential damage to our building would likely be attributed to the rainfall rather than the failure of the cistern, although the cistern would be the cause. So in this regard, we request that the city provide us with its assurance that it will monitor the cistern and notify us immediately upon becoming aware of any bursts, leaks, or overflow in the cistern, and should the bursts, leaks, or overflow negatively impact our building, that the city undertake to rectify same at its expense. And the final report I'm going to refer to is the Downstream Sewer Analysis Report. That was also prepared by WSP. And the combined sanitary sewer system running along Denton is going to be burdened with additional sanitary sewer materials from the proposed buildings and also from TTC. And we want to know if the system would be able to handle this flow.
I'm going to have to start asking you to start wrapping up.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Fletcher has a question for
Have
you.
you had a chance to, I didn't ask the president that, and I should have asked your president. To actually meet with WSP and meet with those who...
Not in this regard, no.
Not in this regard?
No.
So, and I just want to make sure you understand that all we're doing is the rezoning, and all of these important issues you're bringing up really have to do with the approval of the development, the site plan, the construction side, and they're all negotiated at that time. So just to be clear, I hear
Yeah,
you.
I just want to understand too that all these studies were posted on your website, and I'm assuming that you obtained all this information so you'd know whether to go forward with the development. So that's why I'm relying on what your
I
people have
understand.
provided to you.
But you've not had a chance to actually look at the, I'll just call them scientific, whatever they are, WSP and all of those.
I've read all the reports.
You've read them, but you
Yeah.
haven't had a chance to question them, and you understand, I think this will be will this not be at Scarborough Community Council eventually for site plan? It's all here, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So then that's fine. All of those things, those will be next stage to make sure that everybody's got those
Yeah.
right.
It's just that their reports to you are saying that their construction development of the buildings could cause groundwater leakage into our building. That's what they're saying. So we're saying to you, you're presented with these reports, so we
Right.
just don't want that to happen.
And that would come at a later stage to ensure those things don't happen. This is just how we're going to use the land, not
Got it.
all of the details, just to confirm that.
Yep.
We're on the same page. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Cheryl.
You're welcome.
Keegan Harris? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me. Is this thing on?
Yep.
Okay, good. Okay. Everyone ready? All right. So for the past few years, through my current role as the Director of Housing Development with the Neighborhood Group and in my previous advocacy positions, I have witnessed the impact that Toronto's housing crisis has had on Toronto's most vulnerable residents. People experiencing homelessness and people precariously housed experience a housing market that constantly shuts them out. Any opportunity they have for success is almost immediately met with unaffordable housing costs, unsuitable housing conditions, and even a lack of available housing. This housing crisis traps Toronto's most vulnerable residents in a perpetual cycle of poverty, one that is almost impossible to escape. The residents of a city as prosperous as ours should not have to navigate the social and economic impacts of a housing crisis at this magnitude. Everyone deserves safe and affordable housing. It's why I'm here today to voice my support for the proposed Housing Now site at 777 Victoria Park Avenue. This site makes sense. There is easy access to TTC, community services, and to the vibrant community along the Danforth. I recognize many of the concerns associated with this project, especially from within my sector, the concern for developing enough deep, affordable units. Nevertheless, these Housing Now sites represent an opportunity of hope. Hope that in the next decade, the city will begin taking this issue as seriously as it needs to be. Therefore, I'm cautiously optimistic that throughout the development of this project, more work will be done to ensure the building of more truly affordable units in these sites. I'm not speaking today solely as an advocate or in my professional capacity. I'm also a resident of the neighborhood. I experienced the traffic delays at Victoria Park and at the Danforth during rush hour. I know how difficult it is to find parking in the area. But our concern right now needs to be to ensure that everyone in our community, our city, receive the housing that they deserve. I call on everyone in our community to join me in welcoming our new neighbors when this project is completed. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any questions? Seeing none, thanks for joining us here today.
Thank you.
Tom McGee? Good afternoon, Tom.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm also a resident of 757. These are my neighbors. I had a lot to say, but they've said most of it, and you've decided that that's going to be brought up at different successive meetings. So I just want to tell you a little bit about myself. I was born in the slums of Glasgow, 1957. Came over to Canada in 1963. Lived in subsidized housing for 15 years of my life. Lived in Flemington Park for 13 years. And I lived in the same apartment building for 23 years, so my rent barely increased over the years. I saved all my life. I've worked to pay for my schooling. I paid for private and university and night school. working 2 full-time jobs and 2 part-time jobs in the community. I worked at TTC. I worked for the City of Toronto for 31.5 years. I worked as an advocate in our local church. And I've been a health and safety advocate in my workplace for the last 25 years, delivering training to most of my fellow workers. So my level of concern is for everybody, and I've lived in communities that you hope to establish in our neighborhood. I'm not opposed, and I'm not in any way, shape, or form a NIMBY. But I've realized in the last little while how frustrating it's been after I'd saved my entire life to buy and purchase a property that is now steadily declining. And it's not due to anybody's fault on council, it's just a lack of resources. We have 2 schools, 2 Islamic centers, a senior center, Oak Ridge Community Center, 1 church, 1 prayer area that's Muslim that's going to be a new mosque on Danforth. You have slated all across. I was going to meetings when I was on the board of directors for the building as well. The 20-year plan stated that there was going to be redevelopment. All the mom and pop shops along the Danforth, between Danforth and Dawes Road, would be rezoned as they have been for commercial and residential, which is great because everybody benefits from that. And not everything is obviously city-owned property. But in our neighborhood, it's not like you have at Warden Woods neighborhood or at the Warden subway station, where you have 3 areas of parkland around there and the subway station on the southeast side. It was very open, lots of wind to blow away all the diesel particulate from the buses. But we have had construction in that neighborhood for 10 years, and you're offering to do another 2 to 3 years worth of construction in our neighborhood. That pollution is causing health problems in our neighborhood that we don't have facilities to maintain or monitor. We have seismic disturbances from all the work that was done at the TTC. Our residents are elderly. I'll include myself since I've retired from the city 4 years ago, so I'm now in my 60s. And the amount of foot traffic, car, truck, delivery, and buses that are in our neighborhood is excessive in any neighborhood, let alone we're going to add another 500 spaces, probably not all with parking. Now you have no parking for delivery. You have no parking for people taking the subway. Where are they going to park? Are they going to park at Parkway Plaza and take the bus down to get to the subway to get to work on an already overused and underserved subway system that has been declining over the last 50 years that I've lived in this country? So I'm asking you, just for one moment, I know everybody's got their own agenda and we're all trying to get social housing. I have no problem with that at all. Just not here. This doesn't work here. You've had 2 studies in the past that have proved that it doesn't work. Now you're going to try and shoehorn another, say 1,000 people minimum, unless they have families as well, into an area that is already underserved and under cared for. We have, as you heard Christine, there aren't enough resources in our neighborhood for us, and you're going to try and put more people in that neighborhood. I don't think the rezoning of this particular site is in anybody's best interest.
Thank you.
Especially when you have all, okay, I'll just finish up. Especially when you have all the rezoning already done all along the Danforth.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Any questions of the deputant? Seeing none, thanks for joining us here today.
Sure.
Jonathan Clough.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon, Jonathan.
Started. Regarding the 777, I've lived across from the subway. My backyard faces the bus and the parking area. as well as my neighbors. We're on a small street called Bryant Avenue. So much for public consultation. The survey of my neighbors, not one of them was notified of the initial meetings on this, and we would be the most greatly affected by this, as they're going to be built right in basically our backyards. I've actually got a petition my neighbor started and asked me to hand it in from our entire one side of the street, which faces the proposed building project from Bryant Avenue. Every address on the east side of Bryant Avenue, which would face this project, are also saying they were not notified. They did not know about the initial meetings. They did not know that this was going on until it was actually starting. I actually went to the third meeting, so I didn't hear about it until the third meeting, and I'd like to submit that petition, even though how far that goes, I don't know. Anyway, that's from the entire side of my street, which faces this project, and we were not properly notified of this project going on. My question to the city is, why are you giving these developers such a free ride and to not making them do the affordable housing, the infrastructure, the libraries, the daycare, and all these kinds of things, including sewers and things that my neighbors have brought up. I feel the city should get control of this artificially inflated housing prices on condos. It's ridiculous. I mean, not everybody's making $100,000 a year and can afford to move into one of these condominiums or whatever you have downtown here. And I'm sure the vacancy rates has got to be awful high. There's no way. There's all these people who have a $150,000 a year job can afford to move into these places and have $10,000 a month to pay for maintenance fees and mortgages and all this kind of stuff. And as my other neighbors have also pointed out, there's already a lot of high-rise buildings, low rental, subsidized housing in our area. As I said, I've lived there for 35 years. It's kept our housing and the condominium prices down very, very low. If you talk to any real estate people or whatever, they have no interest in buying out there or moving out there, even if they can get two houses for the price of one. Crescent Town and Teesdale, Crescent Town, you can buy a condo for next to nothing. I mean, you can buy a 3 or 4 bedroom condo for almost nothing. It keeps the buyers away. The city's recently moved shelters from downtown. They've moved parts of Regent Park during their construction things there to Woodbine, to Dawes Road. They've moved entire shelters out. Our crime rate has just soared. The biggest concern with most of the people, again, is the parking and the traffic. We already have major problems, scores of commuters who don't want to pay, and what I found out to be $4 a day to park at TTC. So if you go to a Green Pea parking, even with 250 parking spots or whatever you're saying, but if it goes to $18 or $20 a day from $4 a day, you know, people don't want to pay $4 a day. We had problems with cars to go. This was a new city initiative where they, instead of parking at the beer store or Metro or whatever, they decided, oh, you can park anywhere you want. Well, guess where they park? All around the subways. So they leave cars there for 3 or 4 days at a time. So cars to go started getting tickets. The city fought them, whatever they did. The cars to go left. Now we've got the new thing, commuter car parking or whatever, and they're parking for 4 or 5 days at a time. We've got constant people parking from Crescent Town who don't want to pay $80 a month for their parking, and from the other surrounding buildings. They're completely jam-packing the street. They're parking for eight hours at a time. They're going to the subway. They're going home. They're, you know, they're packing up bags and carts and stuff and walking 6-7 blocks to home to save on parking. Any more additional parking problems with more, you know, with additional fees of parking for TTC or this type of thing. There's been some debate on, there's a huge wind tunnel between 30 Denton and the 757.
I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up.
Yeah, it's okay. But there's a huge wind tunnel already there, and it's not going to get any better putting 2 more buildings there. And the shadow on our backyard is about 2 hours of sunlight a day.
Great. Thank you.
One page, 5 minutes.
Any questions? And if you clerks can get the copy of the petition, so it becomes part of the
Give it to
record
who?
of the meeting. Clerks will get it from you.
All right.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Next, Susan Fletcher. Good afternoon, Susan.
Hi. Some of you may remember me from my prior work with Applegrove for many years. For those who don't know me, Councillor Fletcher and I are not actually related at all, although we did work together on many things. I live at 757. I'm not part of the condo management. I'm not on the board. I'm not with the other residents who have spoken. I want to tell you about a refugee with one child that I helped to support. Their Ontario Works was recently cut to less than $1,000 a month. I would love for that family to be one of my neighbors, for them to live at 777, to enjoy the convenient access to transit that I have, to go to the nearby schools, to use the childcare center in that building, to go shopping on Danforth, to walk in the parklands along Massey Creek, which is an amazing resource for the neighborhood, to use the community health center, attend services in the faith buildings in the neighborhood. I would really like my refugee friend to be able to do that. If she were to live in that building, the rent would have to come down to what, $250 a month for her to be able to afford it with Ontario Works the way it is now. I would love that to happen. Having said that, I share some of the concerns about the traffic. I'm a driver. When I would recommend that when cars exit from 757, that there be no left turn allowed, so that you can only go east on Denton coming out of 757. I would like to, as I say, welcome my refugee friend to the neighborhood and other folks like her.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thanks for joining us here today. Ryan Endo? Ryan? Yeah. Hello, Ryan. You have 5 minutes.
Hi there. Good afternoon, committee. My name is Ryan Endo. I'm one of the board members on the Danforth Village Community Association. Just a little bit about ourselves. We've been participating in the consultation process for Housing Now, particularly for the concept for 777 Victoria Park Avenue. The DVCA's mission is to build an economically and socially vibrant, safe and walkable community, and to empower the residents of our neighborhood through community involvement. The DVCA has long been a proponent of planning policies that are consistent with this goal and create housing, retail access, and local jobs. The Housing Now initiative presents a creative approach by the City of Toronto to increase Toronto's rental housing stock. We support zoning changes that make new affordable housing a reality in our neighborhood. However, the DVCA is concerned about the city's approach to defining affordability in the context of Housing Now. The City of Toronto has reported that 23% of households pay more than 50% of their before-tax income to housing, and 35% of Toronto families are earning less than $58,000 a year. What's more alarming is that the increases to Toronto's average market rent have far outpaced that of household incomes. Unfortunately, the city has only committed to ensuring that rents not exceed 80% of the average market rent, and only hope to secure rents within 40% of the average market rent for a mere 10% of units. The DVCA does not believe that these goals are enough to address Toronto's affordable housing crisis in an impactful way. We do, however, acknowledge that Housing Now does help create new purpose-built rental apartments, which is important as condo unit development continues to swiftly outpace the growth rate of purpose-built apartments. if the city's committed to committing public lands to the development of housing that Torontonians can afford, offering to create 80% average market rent units and barely any at 40% isn't anywhere near the leap forward that people in the city need right now. But don't make any mistake about it, the DVCA does feel that this is a really, really good thing to do. We do need more apartment units. When you look at the numbers, I was looking at the city manager's report implementing housing now, and 4,500 apartment units relative to 80,000 condo units. That's staggering, and it's a real issue, and it contributes to the precarious housing situation that a lot of Torontonians face. Now, with respect to parking, I do have some more time, so I will speak on the parking matter. Those are legitimate concerns, and they were communicated at the second community consultation meeting. As some committee members are likely aware, the ones that are here right now, 777 Victoria Park Avenue currently exists as a 174 parking parking facility. It's a green P. It's at grade. And what's been proposed is, and just excuse me for a moment, is an additional 56 parking spaces underground. And the concerns, there is depth to the concerns, because right now, all of the TTC vehicles that enter Victoria Park Station, they enter through Denton Avenue. It's a very, very narrow residential street. And another concern that was brought up by community members that attended the consultation was, if there is a presumption that this is affordable housing for people that need access to housing that's affordable, and it's near a major transit hub, which is part of the grand scheme here, why do we need this abundance of parking spaces? Especially considering the fact that the buildings that are adjacent to the concept, there are a significant number of parking spaces that aren't being used there either. So that is a concern that should be taken into account as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any questions? No. Thank you for joining us here today. Alejandra Ruiz Vargas.
Hello again. Thank you for the opportunity. Well, I only coming to say thank you for this project, because this has been the dream of Acorn, 50% affordable rent. Wow, amazing. So I only have to say that if we will have more projects like that, maybe we don't need inclusionary zoning. It will be great, isn't it?
This is different. This is different.
But so yeah, I think so. This is what we have been fighting since 2004, that Acorn has been created here in Canada. And but the only concern that amazed me is how community not understand that this is the use of the land only, and that we're going to work later and how we're going to make better the community. But right now, the use of the land is fantastic. It's what Toronto needs. It's what families need. It's what everybody needs. Because it's very difficult when you walk in the city or in downtown, and now East York, that never was seeing people sleeping in the floors. So so I think so you're doing amazing. I cannot say anything against this. It's great. Congratulations. Keep it up. Very good. And I am quiet for this matter. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alejandra. Thank you so much. Any questions? No, seeing none. Thank you. Sean Mahar.
Thank you. I didn't actually come today to speak to this item, but having heard it come to the table, I felt compelled to just share a couple of things about this project. When my family first came to this country, we moved into the east end of the city. It was a working class union neighborhood where, a single family with 5 kids, single income family with 5 kids could afford to live. My mom used to shop at the Shoppers World. I know this intersection like the back of my hand, been there 100,000 times. And I remember when I was little going to my first political meeting, and the front-running candidate in that neighborhood was asked how he felt about all the immigrants coming to that part of the city. And he said, it's okay, it gives us someplace to go and eat. That guy lost that election to Dorothy Thomas by 1,000 votes, and she went on to serve the city for a decade on city council. Because that's the kind of neighborhood the east end of the city was and always ought to be. There is no place in Toronto that has too much affordable housing. Every part of Toronto has too little affordable housing. And I would be grateful to this council if it would make sure that the neighborhood that took us in had more affordable housing. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And that is it for speakers. Questions of staff? Councillor Fletcher.
I just wanted to clarify with our chief planner that currently what we're doing is we're rezoning that site, which is TTC parking lot, in order to be able to build housing on that.
That's correct.
And then after that, there will be all of the details about the site plan and where the roads are going, and there's a lot of time to be able to go over the reports that some of the residents, the condo residents, have brought forward, and that you can go into detail on that once there's an approval to actually proceed.
That's correct. Through the Housing Now program, the next step is we move into procurement. So we look for a development partner. And then when we have a development partner, the process is rejoined and picked up again, and we get into the detail of a site plan, working with that development partner, create TO, the city, and the community.
And often in developments, there is, because of construction, there's a pre-construction at the next door neighbor or close by and post. So can you explain a little bit about that in a large site where there'd be photos taken of the outside, inside, so that if anyone has any questions or concerns about what's gone on, there's an evidence of what it looked like ahead of time, and if there needs to be any reparations, then that's part of that overall construction plan. Is that, am I right, or?
Yes, through the chair, you're generally describing what takes place involving a proponent, a developer, their development team that includes engineers and other experts in construction. They engage with the city, and it's governed by the Ontario Building Code. So the city's building staff and engineers are all engaged in a review of the development and any conditions required to both secure the site and secure the public realm and the security of other properties in the vicinity of the construction are governed by the regulations that are contained in the Ontario Building Code. So that process is taken up in detail when we get much closer to the building permit and development process.
And the other thing is that what we talked about this morning was the major station transit assessment. So this is a pretty big transit station. Do you think this is adequate, or an adequate development for a transit station, given that we're supposed to load so much density at transit stations? So
Yes,
it going to meet the requirement, or will the Ontario government come back and say that it's not enough density and it needs to be, there needs to be more there?
No, I think we're recommending it. It's an appropriate amount of density. We've taken into account all of the city's official plan policies. It advances the housing agenda through that complete community lens. So there's also a daycare, retail, and community space. So we've tried to, as much as possible, respond to some of the issues that have been raised. The built form has been modified. The density has gone up through the course of the project because we are trying to optimize the potential of the site in close proximity to the transit, and by doing so, optimize the amount of affordable housing that can be generated on the site.
So I guess I'm just going to ask if once this is approved, I would not expect that the Ontario government could come back and say, redo that for more density, that we'd be out the door with this one and not in danger of being pressured for more at this transit site?
No, I mean, this is a zoning bylaw amendment, and it's open for anyone to appeal, but it is not sent to the Ontario government for any kind of approval, so I'm not anticipating any issue with the province of Ontario.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Bradford.
Thanks very much. How many meetings did this might be for city planning or create TO? This was our first Housing Now site, and I'm wondering what the planning process was like for this site and how we were able to move and accelerate that process faster than some of the other ones.
So through the chair, we had the two open houses that were referenced by the deputants. In June and September, we had pop-ups in the subway station at Crescent Town, and we were invited to meet at 757 twice now since the initiative started.
Okay. And so there was a number of meetings that were brought to residents. There were meetings in parks, there was a meeting at subway stations, plus two bigger citywide Housing Now meetings for this project. Were those meetings well attended?
They were very well attended. They were packed audiences. We had over 350 people at the two open houses.
Okay.
Total.
What sort of feedback did you get? I'm sure it was across the spectrum, but what we're hearing from deputations this afternoon, groundwater, parking, shadows, did that stuff come up at those meetings? Did you hear that feedback?
Yes, so that feedback was shared with us. So when we were invited to 757 Victoria Park, they shared the very professional analysis that they shared with you today, and we also heard it in the open house sessions. Many people also spoke about general support or interest in actually having a unit. They wanted to sign up or apply for a unit tomorrow if that was possible.
Okay. And recognizing, as our chief planner stated, the process here, we're talking about a zoning process as opposed to site plan where we would address the ingress, egress, all of those sort of things. But if we think of about this as basically a box or a building envelope is what we're bringing forward. From that perspective, are we able to address some of the planning considerations that we would be considering in a typical application, angular plane, setback, adjacencies? Are those things accounted for in this process?
Yes, through the chair, the zoning bylaw amendment itself does capture many of those design standards that you just referenced. In addition, we left it such that the access issue that was mentioned today by the deputants can be resolved at site plans. So it's possible that we can shift some of the egress or other movements to other sites or other locations, such as on Victoria Park itself. That's best resolved when we have the building plan itself and we know what building we're working around in terms of access points.
So at this point, given that there's no applicant selected, it would be premature to make those decisions. You're anticipating, public, private, co-op, the applicants will bring ideas forward, you'll evaluate them, and then through a site plan process, we can address some of those things.
That's correct, and we're taking the input from consultation and our own review to signal what we do want and limit the options to the best options possible.
Now, I understand with some of the Housing Now sites, maybe all of them, they're going to the design review panel and the planning review panel. Those are tools we have to solicit outside feedback. Did 777 Victoria Park go to the DRP or planning review panel?
Through the chair, it went to both.
What sort of feedback did we get there?
So we got higher level feedback at the planning review panel since that was earlier in the process. At the design review panel, there was a lot of support, generally speaking, for the massing of and the scale of the development, given its location near transit, but also sympathy towards the improvements to the public realm or the pedestrian experience that needed to be done on what's right now just a bare parking lot.
When staff originally brought this forward, it was estimated that it would be at 450 units on the site. We're now at 508. I share the Deputant Sean's view that we actually have a shortage of affordable housing and that there's not enough. How did we go from 450 to 508?
So through the chair, the 450 units is quoted from our January report, where we were taking a very initial stab, and I'll admit it was a conservative estimate of what was possible on the site. And once we got into the details of both the physical form of the building, its programming, and also started talking internally as well as with the community, we refined a concept that we recommend today.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, I do have a couple quick ones. So I'm curious on slide 10 of your presentation, you have actually the submission of the rezoning for staff review in July. So 5 months ago, 6 months ago?
So through yourself, through the chair, I can explain that process a little bit. So part of our work was to bring together an interdivisional team that reviewed this concept from many different angles. We had our initial submission in July, both from a consultant team retained by Creatio as well as internally. We made our comments as we would on any typical application, and that was refined, improved, and submitted again in September.
So it seems to me that it's moving quite well. So we are able to get these applications, like, what have we done here that worked that maybe we can replicate in other instances?
To the chair, some of the things that we did was, first of all, we sat down with all our corporate partners and laid out the process that we were going to go through, identifying that affordable housing is a key priority for the city and that we needed to find a way to advance these in a more expeditious way. We also worked with our partner Create to identify all the required studies that we would need to ensure that we had a complete, and when I say complete application, there's complete and then there's truly complete, so that when we started our review, our interdivisional review, that we were working with a complete package. So those are some of the steps that we've undertaken. So with a good, complete package, we're able to advance it. One thing that I will want to point out to the committee, one of the things that staff are doing, which I think is critical as we advance these, we're going to do a debrief, because we're going to see what has worked, what hasn't worked, so that as we advance each of the other ones, we're improving upon the process. And that means both internally and with our other partners.
Great. Well, thank you. It's great to. And just one more question. We need to have 50% affordable and an average of up to 80%, correct?
Correct.
Average of 80%. So average of 80% serves incomes of about how much?
80% itself serves, depending on the family size or the bedroom size, it serves incomes of roughly $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year.
Okay, great. Thank you. Speakers? Anybody that would like to speak on this item? Councillor Bradford?
Very quickly, I'll be brief because everything on this project is about moving forward and moving forward quickly. But I would like to thank city planning staff for getting these proposals in front of us in just under a year, which is actually quite, coming from city planning, I can appreciate that's quite an accomplishment. And moving anything of this magnitude and size forward in a year's time is quite a feat. And likewise, thanks to Creatio staff who I know are working to make sure that we come forward with the procurement model and the business side of this equation that's actually going to work here. And then Councillor Bilau, Deputy Mayor Bilau, and Fletcher, they are on the board of Creatio, and they've been reviewing the business cases and for the first 4 sites, and it's great to have their leadership on this. And I'd also acknowledge Councillor Crawford, who is not here on this committee, but he was out at the meetings with me. He was very involved on this file, and he's very supportive. And as the name suggests, it's housing now, like we need it now, and he's there with us on that. So as much as many folks on this committee and people in the room here Chair, are already there when it comes to more affordable housing now, and recognizing that that comes with some density. Not every community is necessarily the same, and not everyone has that viewpoint, and that's why these discussions and consultations have been really important. We heard today that there's not the services that support this. I agree, but I would also say that you can look across the Toronto landscape here, and I think you'd be hard-pressed to find any neighborhood where we're busting at the seams with services to accommodate growth. So that is a challenge, and it's a challenge that we're going to have to address together, but it's not a challenge unique to this intersection. Certainly, that's something that we're all dealing with. I'm the councillor on just the other side of Victoria Park, and we had conversations with residents too. We had staff out in the Dentonia Park Tennis Clubhouse. We had a jam-packed meeting in there because residents have brought forward concerns. But again, and we're hearing it's not an opposition to affordable housing or to more housing. It's about how it takes place. And I think it was great to hear that it's been through design review process. It's been to the planning review panel. There is a sound, solid planning rationale for bringing these sites forward, and I know that's really important. So I just want to express that, again, I fully support the proposal. I'm excited that we're moving forward with building more rental housing in this city. That's certainly what we need, and anytime you can get 500 units anywhere, that's a major help when we are in such a housing crunch. So that's it from me, and looking forward to moving this ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Bradford. Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Madam Deputy Mayor. We are swimming upstream as far as housing is concerned and the ability to have a good place to live. The number of people moving into the city every year is 30,000 people a year. There's a heck of a lot of people moving in. Oh, did you just change that?
77 last year.
Oh, last year was 77 in 2018, but the projection has always been 30. So now we have more. And we do need housing, and we have heard of the importance of affordable housing, particularly this morning, in trying to get inclusionary zoning and noting that our own sites, we are actually acting on that. And so I just want to congratulate everybody for the first site out the door and for rounding out not just having housing, but many other community services there. I think it's a great project. I also understand that change is difficult and things moving into neighborhoods because we deal with these every day at Toronto and East York Community Council. We have a lot of condos. We don't get as much affordable housing as we'd like. It's a lot easier to approve that. But where neighbors and others are really quite concerned about the impact. I will just say on Queen Street East, that all of the housing that's been built there, the impact has been to increase people's values of their homes. It's also been hard because it has now pushed people out of their homes in affordable rental situations. But I do want to say to all of those who are concerned and haven't had a lot of development in the neighborhood, and I understand people in the condo, that's your equity, that's what you have, you've bought that, you're concerned. And I know there's a lot of women came to speak to us today, and I know that that would be a concern. And I just want to say that at any time with any development, there is a lot of nuts and bolts that we get into, and that includes making sure that your building looks the same as it did when the construction started next door. And it's a very finely grained process, and I'm expecting that will happen here. This is at planning and growth, so it's a little different than being at community council. But the local planners and others and developers and housing now, that's part of the job. And hearing about water and many other things, I know that's of concern. And I want to make sure that when we're here at the next round, at the site plan and everything else, that you've met with all concerned, that you've heard about that some of those concerns have been put to rest because you understand exactly what that process will be. So I'm not going to assume that you don't want a development there. I'm going to assume you're nervous about what's going to happen to your equity and to your place. And therefore, I think you know that I'm going to be asking a lot of those questions on your behalf when this comes back, after we get the zoning and density approved on this site.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Any other councillors? Seeing none, I would like to say a few words. I'd like to thank staff. This is the first site in the Housing Now program, and I think it clearly sets the tone on how differently the city is doing things. First of all, the way that we're dealing with our public land to create a good public benefit. All the value of this land is being reinvested on this site for community service, such as a daycare, such as the community space, but also some of the affordable housing and rental, which is needed in here. So the land value is actually being reinvested right there on that site. The other thing as well is that we've seen an expedited planning process. We've recognized how fast we need to move on these sites, how fast we need to move on this issue, and so I think that we've clearly demonstrated that when we have a good application that comes forward, that planning with dedicated resources can move this forward. We also recognize that this is not going to be the solution for affordable housing. Actually, when we talk about affordable housing and we bring one of the solutions, very often we get the question, will this solve the affordable housing issue? Of course not, because housing is not going to be solved with one solution. Housing is a continuum that will need many, many tools, many, many things that need to be done in order to target the various points of this housing continuum. What we have in front of us is that we are at this alone. This is a proposal that is going to be, right now, only has municipal funds, unheard of. We have built affordable housing in the past with provincial and federal funds. What we have in front of us is to build on a site with 50% affordable housing using land and incentives and funds created by the municipality. But the kind of affordable housing that we're also creating as well, let's be clear about this. It's not as deeply affordable as we need it in some instances, absolutely not. But it's much needed because it will have an average of 80%. And I just wanted to bring you some numbers because I actually checked the median income of this neighborhood, and it's about $48,000. You know what the income is of an average 80% market rent that we're actually targeting? It's about $40,000 to $50,000. So what we're actually doing is we're actually building housing for our neighbors. We're building housing so that Torontonians don't continually get pushed out of this city, and that people like so many of us can continue to afford to live in this city. This is what we're doing here. And this is because we've left housing in the hands of the marketplace for so long that now Torontonians that make $40,000, that make $50,000, that make $60,000 are getting pushed out of our city, and governments have started to interfere in this condition. So I hope that we all agree that we need a mixture. We need a mixture of housing in here. But what we're doing here as well is saying to Torontonians that we need an inclusive Toronto, that we need a Toronto of the people like so many of us can afford and can continue to live in this city. Thank you. Okay. And with that said, can I have a motion to approve the report? Okay, Councillor Parks, all those in favor? Recorded vote.
All those in favor of adopting the item before you, Councillor Bradford, Councillor Perks, Councillor Fletcher, Councillor Bailao. Any opposed? None. That motion carries unanimously.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And
Can I just thank everybody for waiting for the day that was here on this issue, and also just let you know that, and we didn't say this at the beginning, that Councillor Robinson is actually not with us because she's having treatment for.
And that she's having a speedy recovery, and we wish you the very, very, very best.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. And we're now moving into item number 3. Nope, item number 4, actually. Amendments to Chapter 354 Apartment Buildings and Progress Update to Rent Safety O. We'll start with the presentation from staff, and then we'll move into the deputations, and then questions of staff.
All right. Thank you, and good afternoon. My name is Carlton Grant, and I'm the Executive Director of Municipal Licensing and Standards. I'm joined by my colleague Elizabeth Glibbery, the Director of Investigation Services, who's responsible for the Rent Safe TO program in our division. Short presentation, just to give you an outline of the program. This is an update of the program that was started 2 years ago. It's really important to note that it's only 2 years old. It's evolving. We recognize the opportunities to continue to build and improve upon this program. Improvements related to how we do our evaluations, tenant outreach, and engagement, all of which to increase the overall awareness of the program. We are in the cycle of monitoring and continuing to improve. The Rent Safe TO program is the first of its kind in Canada, and it builds on the program initiated a number of years ago that many of you may be familiar with, called MRAB. There's 3 components to the program. It's a registration, audit, and enforcement program. It's really about landlords and property managers turning their minds to develop plans related to cleaning, waste, electrical, and capital improvements. And also, the critical piece of the program is to inform tenants of building matters through the Tenant Notification Board. As of October 2019, a total of 3,446 buildings have registered with the city. That's a 99% compliance rate with registration. Of the 68 that haven't registered, they have been invoiced, and we will be adding it to their taxes. 90% of the buildings, in the second year of the program, staff reevaluated over 1,800 buildings of the lowest scoring buildings from the first year. And from that, 90% of these building scores increased at an average of 12%. Through the audit process, enforcement staff have worked to rectify 3,300 deficiencies, have closed 43 notices of violation, and 245 orders to comply. Staff have also laid 338 charges with 194 convictions. We've laid fines that range from $50 to $30,000. Communications and outreach is something that we're working on with both landlords and tenants. There is a registration portal that we use with them, and that data is now on open data. It shows both the registration data and the evaluation data, but we need to continue to work on it because open data can be cumbersome and messy, and we need to work such a way that our website, clearly you can type in your building and get your evaluation score. Done a lot of public education, multilingual advertisements in 12 different languages, advertised in as many places as we can think of, but we continue to improve in this area. For some of you, these are some of the TTC ads, again, to educate and to inform tenants of their rights is the right to have heat in their apartment. If they have a pest problem, there is a methodology to have the pests eradicated. So again, this is something we're working on, we're continuing to work on, and I'll pass it over to Elizabeth to walk us through the next few slides.
Okay, so all of our information from Rent Safe TO has been uploaded to the Open Data Portal so that it can be accessed by the public and by organizations external to the city. The type of information that is available is the registration data for apartment buildings, the number of stories and units in the building, whether it has air conditioning, heating systems, cooling, gas, hydro, those sorts of things. Okay. Am I on the wrong slide?
Yeah, you have an older version.
That's okay. I'll collect myself. Okay, so research and consultation. In order to assess the progress of the program and identify improvement areas, staff looked at engaging with about 300 individuals through consultation. We reviewed 82 written submissions, conducted research including jurisdictional scans in New York City, Vancouver, and London, England, and we commissioned a representative from the Public Opinion Survey. So now I'm going to get on to the report recommendations. Staff recommend amending Chapter 345 or 354 for apartment buildings to require that landlords display a copy of the building evaluation result document. And this is an example of the document. It's still a work in progress, but this is we're modeling it after. And this will be posted in a prominent place on the notice tenant board in the lobby for all tenants to have access to. There's also additional information about the evaluation contained on the web for those who are interested. Per the report recommendations, we recommend that landlords post the following materials on the tenant notification board: information about the rent safe TO and the contact information for 311, any violations of the Ontario Fire Code, additional informations about places on the property that have cooling rooms in warm temperatures or shaded areas, and then additional information related specifically to pest control, including documentation of services, schedules, and service standards. Staff also recommend that landlords provide information to tenants on the rent safe TO, and we do that through the building audit process, as well as other venues. And that this be done on an annual basis and probably at the time that they're signing their lease. Additional recommendations: create a variable fee for recovery of costs associated with the provision of emergency social services, temporary lodging in instances where a substantial portion of a building becomes uninhabitable. The building is 3 or more stories with 10 or more units, and the landlord does not provide rehousing for their tenants. Staff recommend that these fees be waived for social housing providers. Staff also recommend City Council request the Province of Ontario to move forward. Got to make sure I'm on the right page here.
Yeah.
I am? Okay. Doesn't look like the right page.
There it is, at the very bottom.
Right at the bottom, yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. City Council requests the Province of Ontario to move forward with legislation to address concerns around safety, reliability, and accessibility of the elevators. Additional recommendations: pursuing greater education for the landlords related to maintaining elevators in apartment buildings, and best practices for pest management. Staff also recommend pursuing greater outreach for tenants, including issuing an RFP for a qualified organization to undertake tenant engagement. We would be doing this through an RFP to undertake the engagement, and we're also looking at perhaps a community engagement officer to fulfill this recommendation. Staff continue to assess rent-safe TO programs and make iterative changes as the program and the needs of the city evolve. Some key operational improvements that staff are exploring include an updated tool for building evaluations in 2020, and we're working on that evaluation tool right at this time. Collection of more robust data through the registration process, and enhancements to our communications and data sharing.
That concludes our presentation.
We'll start with the deputations, and I'm going to alter the order of the deputants because I have somebody that needs to pick up a child at daycare, so I hope everybody understands. And so I'll be calling Chaklo Shaparova.
It's not you, Kristen.
Thank you. I hope you make it on time.
Dear Chair and members, Planning and Housing Committee, thank you for the opportunity to represent my community at this Planning and Housing Community meeting. My name is Shahlo Sharipova, and I am a resident of Thorncliffe Park neighborhood. I am a community ambassador for the neighborhood organization and a leader of Reach for Change group. The mission of our group is strengthening community in order to create a safe and well-established environment to raise our children, encourage members to constant learning and teaching them how effectively we can employ our potentials for a better future. I would like to begin by giving some demographics of Thorncliffe Park area. So according to the 2016 census report, populations of our area is 21,108. There are approximately 36 residential buildings in our area, and buildings that have 5+ stories are 93.4%. So renter households make up almost 89%. Almost 74% of our population have mother tongue other than English, and medium income is 46,000, and low-income families are 37% versus 17.4 across the city. I'm proud to say that my community was a significant part of a comprehensive engagement approach undertaken by MLS to better understand the issues related to apartment buildings maintenance and operations in Toronto. Leading by TNO and with the support of many stakeholders such as Flemington Community Legal Services, Toronto Public Health, Flemington Thorncliffe Interagency Network, Federation of Metro Tenants Association, RentSafe, TO, and some of residents groups, we organized 4 community consultation meetings, 2 tenants' right information sessions, and several workshops which engaged a total of more than 300 residents. So during these events, we discussed 3 main categories: housing affordability, quality maintenance, and safety. So I would like to focus on some maintenance issue because they are in scope of PH 10.4. The buildings in Thorncliffe Park area are generally in a deplorable state. There are issues over the entire neighborhood. Buildings are old. Maintenance requests are often ignored, or when fulfilled, they are half done or done with unsafe patchwork fixes. Units in bad conditions do not get renovated. Sometimes landlords require residents to move out in case of renovation and then back in again, but to a higher rent. Facilities such as elevators, laundry rooms, and garbage were reported to be frequently inadequate or even unsafe. Residents also expressed hygiene concern about sharing poorly maintained laundry facilities with so many others. Balconies also in a bad state of repair. Garbage facilities were also indicated to be inadequate, especially for recycling. Compost facilities are absent in most of the buildings. This causes a major garbage problem in many buildings, with garbage left in corridors, outside the buildings, or in overflowing heaps in the garbage room. Due to garbage issues, raccoons are in a common scene in buildings, and in addition to other pests such as bedbugs, cockroaches, mice, and pigeons were noted to be a major problem. The issue is widespread enough in this area that landlords sometimes ignore requests for pest control, stating that these problems are normal in every building. Landlords don't have backup plans for urgent or emergency issues. For example, the water outage incident in one of the buildings at Thorncliffe Park Drive was affected to more than 2,000 residents because of lack of emergency plans for this facility. And also, I would like to mention some safety issues, even though they're not in the scope of PH 10.4, is this lack of security cameras, which leads to unsafe entrances and risk of vandalism, bad state of repair balconies, and management has no control over violence and smokers in the building. So our recommendations, based on what our residents say, all the buildings which are 40, 50 years old need proactive maintenance, could be a phone line monitored by the landlords. We ask city to put more pressure on the landlords. Every building should be painted a prescribed number of years so quality is maintained. Apartment buildings should install automatic garbage chutes. Landlords and residents need to plan how to respond to a climate crisis, including extreme weather conditions, and need to look between poverty and low-income family. Although the report PH 10.4 is comprehensive and we strongly agree with every single point, now we encourage committee to vote for the budget allocation to support the enforcement, all of the actions brought in the report. Also, we strongly agree with the staff report's 6 recommendations, and we would like to highlight some items in recommendations number 1. If a tenant requests a copy of the evaluation, there should be no photocopy charge or fee charged by the landlord to provide the copy. And also in terms of posting of pest management information controls and treatments, should also include waste management information.
I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up.
Oh, sorry. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Any questions of the deputants? Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Next up, Alejandra Ruiz Vargas.
Madam Chair, there's 13 deputants here today, and I know there's a hard stop for 4 o'clock, so I don't know what you'd like to do about that.
So Clerks is advising me that we can't reduce the speaking time for deputants. We can reduce our question time for 3 minutes because we've already heard from one deputant, so we can't change that mid-course.
I then would just suggest to deputants that we will lose quorum at 4, and that means we will not deal with this issue today, and it won't go to council this month.
So maybe we can condense the message a little bit and we can all work together on this. And okay, Alejandra, let's if you okay, let's start with the deputant. Alejandra, please.
Thank you. So I'm going to go to a point based on the time. So we did ACOR did a survey of 107 members with different buildings, and what we found is that we did a survey specifically, of course, about rent safe. This was last week. We got 107 responses, and actually it's pretty good for people that work, isn't it, or busy. So 54% of respondents still had never heard about rent safe program. 46% of respondents did not have a tenant notification board. That is a major component on rent safe and a requirement for landlords. 1/3 of tenants reporting seeing cockroach every day. 34% reporting having bed bugs in the last 2 years. 66% of people responding to the survey say that they had problems getting repairs. Only 30% say they had their repairs done in timely manner, and every single respondent had a property standard violation. So our suggestions, we know there have been 2 years that the RENCTO is working, and we're not going to fix a problem of 20-something years or more in 2 years, but we know that we can do better. So we are proposing a rating system, a building that rates system like dying safe, with signs on the front of the building clearly displaying the building grade and advertising 311 for any tenant issues. Engagement, this is very important because people is scared out there to even complain, and they don't have the faith in 311 or in the RENCTO better. So we are asking for tenant engagement, what we call boots on the grounds. Enforcement, an administrative monetary penalty system so that property standards violations are penalized right away. Transparency, we are asking for clear standards of service from MLS so tenants are aware of the process after they call 311. Tenants and landlords need a straightforward process that is transparent about when inspections will be done. And the criteria, we are looking for a criteria that should be expanded to include pests, mold, roofs, and whether or not the landlord is meeting the bylaw requirements of RENCTO. Increased capacity, RENSAFE should increase the registration fee and its tax supported budget to hire more inspectors and supervisors. And partnership, RENSAFE should report on progress and difficulties twice a year to housing advocates and groups. And lastly, the RENCTO program had certified 500 those roads. People that knows 500 those roads without knowing inspector will never certify 500 those roads. So we are really, well, we need to work in that as a city, and we need to do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Alejandra. Any questions? Seeing none. Marcia Stone?
Okay, I just want to reiterate some of the things that she talked about. Recently, we just did a call out at 1775 and 1765 Weston Road, 2 apartment buildings on our street. The tenants are living with mice, roaches, broken elevators, no water, and certain issues. The problem is that they tell us, after we did the speak out, we were informed that The city inspected both of those buildings, and they passed inspection. How can that be if the people are complaining and spending money to get rid of bed bugs, mice, roaches, anything that they can find, they're out of their own pocket? So if this building was inspected, my curiosity is, what was the criteria? What did they inspect? Because this didn't just happen in 6 months. So if the building passed inspection 6 months ago, what's transpired in that time? What did you inspect? And as far as rodents and mold, that's a health and safety issue. And these landlords that are doing what they're doing to the tenants are paying their rent, that's criminal. That's illegal, in my opinion. That's against the law, period. And those are the things that we need to address. As far as, I think the rent safe program will go a long way, but we have to deal with the existing landlords that you have that are not following the criteria. So I'm just curious to know, what do they inspect and how that criteria is met? Okay, to you.
Yeah, so my name's Mark Slapinski, and I wanted to add to that. I'm from St. Jamestown, and specifically 650 Parliament. We're still displaced. There's been about 1,500 people that have been displaced from that fire. I truly believe that was like the canary in the coal mine. That was like a sign of future bad things to come. Not only that, but not too long after that, they had that disaster 260 where the pipe burst and knocked the power out. And the same thing happened. Almost 1,500 people were displaced. And my understanding is that we didn't really have the infrastructure to accommodate that. If those people ended up being displaced, I really don't know what would have happened. So how this ties together is I really think both of these could have been prevented if the inspections were done more thoroughly and they had more enforcement powers. Both 650 and 260 Wellesley were inspected, and they were both given a passing grade not too long before either incident. So I believe it's important to prevent these things in the future, to have a system where we can do more thorough inspections and have better enforcement. I truly believe that we shouldn't have to wait until the next apartment burns down or the next power outage before we start really holding these landlords to account. Like, for example, like in Wellesley Parliament Square with 240, 260, and 280, those elevators haven't been working properly for years. Everybody knows about this. It's been on the news like 10 times. Yet, the more we talk about it, the more that happens, nothing really gets done. So I think we need an effective framework to deal with that. And that's about it. Thank you.
My name is Carol Bailey. I'm reading a statement on behalf of one of my neighbors who just had to leave to get her wheel trans. She's been here since this morning.
Said your neighbor was?
My name is Carol Bailey. I'm reading a statement on behalf of one of my neighbors, same building I live in, on behalf of Christina Abbott. She had to leave a few minutes ago because her wheel trans has come and she couldn't stay any longer. So this is her statement. I'm a senior tenant and I live at 110 Unity Road, which is a nonprofit, independent living seniors housing building. My building score got an 83% according to the city's evaluation, but I have no idea how this is possible. ACORN members had a rally at our building in the summer to highlight the issues tenants are dealing with, such as mold, pest infestations, and repairs not being done. At this rally, tenants called 311 and filled out work orders, which were sent to the city with no response and no follow-up. This was 5 months ago. One of my neighbors has to sleep in her bathtub due to a bed bug infestation, and management is not taking care of the issue. She had to get rid of all of her furniture, and she couldn't afford to buy replacements. She also has had to keep all of her clothes in her car and keep her laundry in a plastic bag. In May 2003, I had my first experience with bed bugs. When I contacted management, they told me to keep it to myself, and I was given no information or assistance whatsoever. I had to contact and pay for a bed bug professional to prep my apartment for pest control, and they had to take all of my clothes and linens in a bag. I was left with 2 weeks worth of clothing. Meanwhile, all of my furniture was moved and my possessions were placed on the balcony, where they remained for 12 weeks. I lost a fur coat, box spring, and mattress, a 100-year-old sewing box that was a family heirloom, and a dog bed. This cost me $2,200. The building had my place sprayed, and the second spray was not done properly, so it had to be sprayed a third time. I had to sleep in a chair for 12 weeks while all of my stuff was on the balcony, got rained on, and the extensions on my dining table were warped. My brother had to come from Windsor to move my furniture back and put my bed frame together. It was not the first or the last time I had to deal with issues like this in my building. In 2016, I had to pay $400 to have my apartment prepped for spraying for bed bugs. I had both my foot and hand in a cast at the time. It took my brother 3 months to come from Windsor to put my furniture back where it belonged. This is why I'm absolutely shocked that my building has a score of 83%. Rent Safe Toronto needs to be improved now before anyone else has a chance to go through similar situations like mine. There needs to be evaluation of mold and pest issues. I am a senior on a fixed income and I have a number of health issues and I can't afford to pay for all of the costs associated with pest control and moving when I have doctor's visits to go to, medication to pay for, rent that's due, and other living expenses. There needs to be support for the seniors to help when management needs to spray. And I guess that's it. So that's Christina's statement, and that's it. I'll just leave that.
Thank you. Is Josie still here to the Pewt, or you're, oh, no, okay. So that's, okay.
Hi, I'm Josie Weir. I'm an ACORN member from East York. Thank you for your time today. I'm here to talk about Rent Safe. I'm a tenant, but not in a building covered by Rent Safe. I want to talk about what I hear about other ACORN members at the meetings from East York, Scarborough, St. Jamestown, Weston, Jane and Finch, Etobicoke, the whole area. Many tenants that come to their first ACORN meeting don't know about Rent Safe, don't know about 311. They don't know their rights, and they're scared to complain. They don't think that they can complain. Lots of tenants that have been in their buildings for 10 years are afraid if they complain, they'll get kicked out on the street and lose their affordable rent. I've gone out with ACORN and door knocked on apartments, talked with tenants, talked about their rights, how to fight for healthy homes. I think the city needs to really do some proper engagement of tenants door to door. Another way to boost engagement that ACORN members want would be to sign on the building, put a sign on the building telling tenants about their rights to call 311 if there's any issues and about the evaluation of their building. But it can't be done on a tenant notification board because landlords are still not putting those up. It needs to be like Dine Safe on the front entrance of the building. Can you imagine let your tenants choose where to put their ranking? The good tenants would display it proudly, but the bad tenants would, or the sketchy ones, would hide it in the back somewhere where you wouldn't notice. Finally, we need transparency on how Rent Safe works. We need to know the protocol, and if the protocol doesn't work, you need to update it so that you're actually enforcing property standards. Why were there 6,000 complaints to Rent Safe but so few orders and convictions? How many fines were issued? How many tickets were written? So many tenants at ACORN meetings don't see the point calling 311 if they do know about it because they don't think anything will happen. Please, ACORN is asking you to engage the tenants. Be transparent and let us know how you're protecting our rights and making sure we have healthy homes.
Thank you, Josie. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you so much. Aaron Kaplan, co-chair of Toronto St. Paul's Tenants Association.
Pat Wilkin is joining me.
Great.
Or we'll both speak together.
Sounds good.
I mean, after each other.
Yep.
On behalf of the Toronto St. Paul's Tenants Association Network and the Achilles Tenants Network, I'd like to present recommendations related to the requirement of apartment building evaluation reports and the capital plans required under Section 7.4 of the bylaw. We are recommending that future evaluation reports of registered apartment buildings be expanded to include an assessment of property standard violations, mold or pest, building ventilation systems, water quality, pressure, condition of unit, windows, as well as building roof, and the content compliance of the tenant notification board and the tenant compliance of the content compliance of the capital plan. Why do we make this recommendation? There is a recognition in the report by MLS staff that the current evaluation tool used for creating building evaluation reports requires improvements. Yet rather than recommending additional substantive areas that should be evaluated, the report indicates that the staff is, quote, exploring options to improve the process for the evaluations to be conducted in 2020, close quotes. We feel that this position is neither specific nor proactive enough given the concerns identified in the consultation report. Summary of the consultation states, pest infestation is among the most common challenges. Other common issues that are experienced include issues with mold, lack of clean ventilation systems, and unsafe windows. Therefore, there's a clear indication from the consultations what areas must be added to the evaluation report. The committee needs to direct staff to ensure that the omissions referenced in our recommendations are included in the revised evaluation tool, since these important issues are not being currently evaluated, and that's why a building could get 83% and have all the issues referenced in the previous deputant. The second recommendation is with respect to notice of evaluations. The notice of a regular site visit should be published on the apartment building's tenant notification board 30 days before the site visit. Tenants should be invited to provide comments or concerns regarding their building to the Rent Safe TO program so that the bylaw enforcement officer can take the tenant's concerns into consideration during the site visit. After all, the purpose of the Rent Safe TO program is to improve the tenants' living standards. Please remember, it's the tenants who have the lived experience. Our final recommendation with respect to the evaluation is the recommendation for evaluation-based rating system. We agree that the evaluation reports should be posted on the tenant notification board. However, a disclaimer should also be posted that would indicate that the current evaluation reports do not evaluate mold, pest, building ventilation system, water quality, pressure, condition of unit windows, as well as building roof, and the content compliance of the tenant notification board and the content compliance of the capital plan. Let me now turn to the capital plan. Apartment buildings' current capital plan should be made available upon tenant request. Any failure to comply by a landlord within 60 days of the tenant request should result in an officer issuing an order to comply. Secondly, rent-safe TO enforcement officers should be trained on the purpose of the capital plan, as well as the distinction between a capital plan and a capital project. Finally, the rent-safe TO program should adopt and implement a standard capital template, as well as provide landlords with instructions on how to complete the capital plan template. Why do we make these recommendations? Despite the presence of the bylaw, it has been our experience that many apartment building capital plans are either non-existent or not maintained. The interpretation of the requirement for the development and maintenance of the capital plan is not well understood by the rent-safe TO enforcement staff of MLS. We're
together. I just wanted to confirm that.
Yeah. Landlords present a capital project as being equivalent to a capital plan, when in fact, a capital project is a distinct element within a capital plan. And as I mentioned, the Rent-Safe TO program does not have a standardized capital plan. Perhaps Rent-Safe TO can discuss the requirement for a capital plan with their colleagues in Tower Renewal, who state on their website, coming soon, capital planning resources, including a worksheet and a decision tree for prioritizing capital plan improvements. Finally, the purpose of including a capital plan as a landlord requirement within the bylaw was clearly stated in the March 17, 2017 Staff Report Council, which states, Owners will be required to think proactively about maintaining and replacing key capital elements in their building. And tenants will be able to assess the plan and have more information about how the building is managed and when major capital projects will be undertaken. This is similar to the Reserve Fund study requirements in Condominium Act. Close quote. It also provides tenants with information about potential plans and related costs that may impact their rents.
Good afternoon. I'm here today as a member of the Toronto St. Paul's Tenant Association Network, as well as the Brentwood Towers Tenant Association. And it is on their behalf that I would like to present the following recommendations to committee today in response to the report submitted by the Planning and Housing Committee. And the first that I would like to address is with respect to the accountability framework. Neither the proposed amendments to the current bylaw nor the staff progress report reference an accountability framework for the Rent-Safe TO program. Currently, the Rent-Safe TO program lacks a published service standard for the length of time required to investigate a complaint. Additionally, the vast majority of tenants are unaware that they are entitled to receive feedback regarding the investigation of their complaint. And furthermore, the majority of tenants are unaware that they can call 311 to request that a rent-safe supervisor review the investigation of their complaint if they're not satisfied with the results. Here are our recommendations. Number one, the Rent-Safe TO program should have a clearly defined service standard for the length of time required to investigate a complaint, and that it is published on the Tenant Information Portal. Number two, the Rent-Safe TO program should inform tenants on Tenant Information Portal that they're entitled to receive feedback regarding the investigation. And three, the Rent-Safe TO program should inform tenants on the Tenant Information Portal that they can call 311 to ask to speak to a supervisor. Including all of this information on the Tenant Information Portal will further educate tenants on their rights with respect to the Rent-Safe TO investigations, and to whom they can turn if they are not satisfied with outcomes. It provides the necessary details in one place and makes it much easier for tenants to resolve issues under the Rent-Safe TO umbrella of responsibility. The second issue I want to address is tenant engagement. The staff report recommends that, and I quote, MLS move forward with the City Council's request to issue a request for proposals to seek specific organizations to pursue door-to-door tenant engagement in 2020. This will be included in our existing communications budget and will not require an adjustment. As well, it is noted that staff will work to ensure that the qualified bidder has an experience engaging diverse communities, low-income tenants, and those who face barriers around mental health and disabilities. We feel that tenant engagement is everyone's responsibility and should not be left solely to a third party. The monies included in the budget for the hiring of this third party could be put to better use.
Pat,
Our
I'm going to have to ask you to start wrapping up because the 10 minutes are up.
I'll be done in probably a minute. Our recommendation is as follows. City council.
Really sorry, it has to be really a wrap-up thought.
Okay.
Tenants should be, as
We
councillors
feel
should-
that city councilors should have the outreach.
Okay.
And they should have somebody
Thank you.
from.
Any questions? Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us here today. Next deputant, Bahar Shadpour. Thank you, Bahar. You have 5 minutes.
Hi. So I'm here on behalf of the Advocacy Centre for Tenants Ontario. We're a legal community clinic, and we serve Ontario's low-income tenants. We were part of the initial discussions around the landlord licensing regime, which is now known as the Rent-Safe TO program. And since then, we've been part of all the consultations that the city has had. So first, I want to thank the city and MLS for taking a leadership role in Ontario on this issue. You're recognizing that landlords of multi-residential units need to be held accountable to keep their units in a state of repair. And you're showing a commitment to engage with tenants and facilitating access information that's often vital to tenants' well-being. Since the adoption of Rent-Safe TO 2 years ago, this is the first evaluation report that we're seeing. In our opinion, every municipal program should be annually evaluated, especially a new program. And with a dedicated data analyst position hired by Rent-Safe TO, it's pretty difficult for us to understand why the program evaluation took more than 2 years. The property standards review document, it does not constitute an evaluation of the rent-safe program. The majority of questions relate to property standards overall, and they don't address the effectiveness of rent-safe TO. So proper evaluation of rent-safe TO program would require tenant engagement, an assessment of standards in apartment buildings before and after rent-safe program, and analysis of issues brought to 311. The tenant population is unaware of rent-safe TO, as we've heard, and landlord obligations under the program. So despite the city's efforts, tenants have not been properly engaged nor communicated to. I think we've heard a lot of good ideas on how you can engage with tenants properly. And we support the report's recommendation to improve the awareness of the program and perform greater outreach. And this lack of knowledge of the program also supports the recommendation by the report to require landlords to post the results of the evaluation, information about rent-safe TO, somewhere that's visible and not hidden in the back. Rent-safe TO is a registration, audit, and enforcement program. Rigorous enforcement of the requirements is key to the success of this program. And one major hurdle that we've identified in our previous stakeholder consultations is the wall between rent-safe TO and property standards enforcement. So currently, rent-safe schedule of building evaluation is based on a building's previous evaluation score. Buildings that received a lower score on their evaluation will be scheduled for their next review sooner. Although this thinking makes sense, prioritization of building inspection should also be related to property standard violations. Currently, rent-safe property standards systems are not speaking to each other. This seems quite counterintuitive, especially when in terms of resource sharing and cost-saving opportunities. An integrated system would also increase the safety of tenants living in problem buildings with property standard violations. And last, rent-safe does not allow landlords with an evaluation failing grade to rent any of their vacant units until they comply with bylaws standards and receiving a passing grade. We think this is a major incentive for a landlord to speed up their work that's needed to be compliant. And additionally, since rent-safe will only evaluate buildings receiving a score lower than 65% on an annual basis, the integration of the two systems would provide MLS with better insights into which buildings' conditions may have dropped significantly within the 1-year period by examining the property standard inspection records. So the goal of rent-safe is to ensure that tenants live in safe homes and to improve the quality of our rental housing stock. And the problem, so therefore we think problem buildings identified through property standard records must be made a priority for rent-safe evaluation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you so much. Ask with Alan.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much. My name is Asquith Allen. I am the Director of Policy and Regulatory Affairs with the Federation of Rental Housing Providers of Ontario. And I'm pleased to speak today to PH 10.4. My comments are pretty much twofold. One speaking to the cost recovery tool mentioned in the report, and just a bit about the Certified Rental Building Program. Just off the top, FERPO is a pretty large organization. We represent 2,200 professionals who own, manage, build, finance, service, and supply residential rental units in the province of Ontario. And so with respect to the cost recovery tool mentioned in the report, we do feel that this is somewhat onerous on property owners or on landlords. This does pose a very significant increased risk that we do need to try to protect against. And so that cost, unfortunately, at some point would get passed down to the renters. It's an additional cost to operating a unit. As the report notes, there isn't a fully understood insurance, framework in terms of what is covered specifically under the general liability and the business interruption insurance that's spoken about in the report. So we do think that some more research is needed to get to a better understanding of what RentSafe attempts to do and how we get there. With respect to the Certified Rental Building Program, this is a program that is operating out of our organization, out of FERPO, which started in 2008. The report mentions that it's a privately run quality assurance certification program, but it does a bit more than that. We do have third-party auditors that go in to buildings on a regular basis and checks for over 50-plus standards of practice that are available on our website. So we do believe that the program, as it stands right now, represents the best of the best of apartment living, as opposed to the RentSafe program, which just makes sure that folks are coming into compliance with the basics. We are also tracking tenant satisfaction as a part of that program, which to my understanding RentSafe isn't doing at this moment. So we do think some more research needs to be done in terms of getting to the right place. We do want to work with city staff. Previous staff, I believe, by the name of Mark Srega and Pat Burke, who used to work with the RentSafe program, have met with our Director of Certification, Ted Whitehead, and have spent hours going over our program details and have sort of confirmed that the program is apples to apples with RentSafe and above, given that we had the tenant satisfaction piece. So we would like to see at some point an exemption for CRB-approved buildings. And we think this allows RentSafe the more staff time and resources to actually address compliance issues with other buildings that aren't currently in compliance. So with that, I know folks are all sort of scrambling here, given it's almost 4 o'clock, so I'll give you back my minute and 30 seconds. You're welcome. No questions? Are we sure? We're absolutely sure. All right.
Jordy Dent.
We're going to lose quorum at 4 o'clock.
Everyone can read my deputation. It's listed over there, but I do want to highlight a few points. In 2011, MLS ordered the landlord at 280 Morningside to repair the balcony. The order was never closed. The balcony fell off in 2015. The order remains open to this day. In 2015, 2 investigation orders were issued for 650 Parliament. You can read them. They revealed a number of deficiencies, including electrical deficiencies. Those are still open. Those were never closed. Those are 4 years ago. The building blew up last year. This is a file that we have in our office for the last 50 years on West Lodge. In 1972, West Lodge was written up for 1,000 different orders. The head of MLS says, we don't want to find them at the time. He said, we just want to educate landlords into conforming. 50 years later, this is 2 years worth of complaints around West Lodge. The reason why I bring these things up is that RentSafe was supposed to fix all of these things. It had 5 different elements of it. Not a single one of those element programs has been implemented, not one. Staff haven't even been hired fully to the main aim that they were supposed to be hired to. There's major issues that we've uncovered with the registration, evaluation, and enforcement. 20% of landlords said that they do not allow pets in their building under the registration program. It's illegal under the law. Dozens and dozens of buildings in North York where visitor parking charges are illegal have told MLS staff that they are charging for visitor parking. They were never written up on that, and they were never told to stop. And some of the worst buildings in the city of Toronto, West Lodge, 500 Dawes, they passed their evaluation in MLS. They got a passing grade. One of the reasons why a rent-safe has failed and not been implemented is because during the evaluation period, MLS did not check to see whether any of the new improvements were actually in the building. So they can't tell you how many buildings have a notification board because they never checked that in the evaluation. They can't tell you how many have a cleaning plan because they didn't check that in the evaluation. And I note that staff person Grant said that not that the most important part is that we're making sure that landlords have plans. He didn't say that. He said that the most important part is that we're making sure that landlords turn their minds to having plans because they don't actually have any of those plans right now, and they haven't been checked for that. We are receiving repeated, and I included an email that I just got on Thursday of complaints from the MLS officers are just not actually enforcing anything. One of the deputants who was here was in the press. She said something that we hear every day. Inspectors did not issue any orders or fines. The records do not indicate whether a city inspector went to the building to investigate. This was a building with bed bugs. I can't tell you how hard it is as a tenant advocate to deal with a caller who says that you've got a little baby covered in bed bug bites and MLS will not issue orders. And the day that I have to stop getting that call is the day I'll be happy. We believe in rent-safe. We brought it forth, and we are waiting until the day that it's actually put into effect. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Daryl Chong.
Hey, good afternoon. Thank you. I think you know who I am, so I won't tell you. I hope you know that the GTA members are responsible and caring landlords that really try to do their best. I'm sorry. I'll move a little closer. Excuse me. Again, I think you know who I am, so I won't go through that. I hope that you know that GTA members are responsible operators that care about the safety and comfort of our residents and our communities. You know, so when the stuff happened in St. Jamestown, we're the ones who initiated a series of meetings with Toronto Fire. Mr. Jessup was there, ESA, MLS, former staff of MLS anyway, and we wanted to figure out what happened to make sure it wouldn't happen again. We've been partners with the city on lots of programs, lots of initiatives. We participate with various groups within the city to work together cooperatively. Some of the recommendations in today's report don't reflect some of our previous conversations or discussions or consultations with city senior staff. I'm not going to go through all of it. They're itemized in the recommendations, but I'll hit a few of them. The requirement to display a copy of the evaluation document doesn't really serve tenants in our minds. Categorizing or labeling buildings and the families that live in these buildings by a number or a color is probably not the thing that you want to do. A family's decision to move is not analogous to you choosing a different restaurant to eat in. So although it's convenient to compare the two, Dine Safe and this system, it's not so simple. The assessment process also has improved over the years, but we're still early days and there still needs to be some improvements. One of the things where it is failing is there's still a little bit of inconsistency. Again, it's much better than it was. But if you're going to start displaying numbers or colors on a wall somewhere, then we need the right to appeal or have reassessments or reviews of the assessments. I think in the analogy with the restaurant system, I think those failing or poor graded facilities get reassessed a couple of days later and remarked. So regarding pest control, it asks for a certificate. There's no certificate that I know of. All the products that we use are certified federally by Health Canada and only applied by Ministry of Environment provincially certified technicians. So all of that is already kind of covered. And further, providing details about specifics was something that staff previously said was unwanted because it then identifies the person with bed bugs or the hoarder or somebody with perhaps mental health issues. And that was something that we talked about earlier, and it was decided that some more general stuff was all that was required. The schedule that's listed in section F we use more of an integrated pest management protocol these days. It's not as rigid as the third Thursday of every month, on and on and on. And the treatment timelines are partially already prescribed in the bylaw. So, but our main objection today is the recommendation 2 for the collection of fees. So in April of 2019, the Vital Services Disruptions in Apartment Building report was here, and included in that was a tools for enforcement and cost recovery section. And I'll just read you a sentence from that. It said, city staff will explore the options that the city has to recover costs from building owners and operators, specifically in cases where the evacuation and relocation of tenants is the result of negligence of the landlord. The nature of a potential cost recovery tool will be assessed, including determining the length of time for which the city would seek recovery costs and the impact on housing affordability. So fast forward to today's report, I don't see any analysis of any of the explorations of the options noted in April. The option that's before you to pursue landlords for costs incurred by the city for choosing to accommodate displaced tenants is something that we urge the city to reconsider in more detail as part of a broader options report, as you indicated in April. Also, today's report provides no details on how the charges would be applied. There's no determination of fault. The city has perhaps overlooked the circumstances where a substantial portion of the building becomes uninhabitable as a direct result of a tenant's accidental or purposeful actions. So you recall a few years ago, a smoking tenant flicked a lit cigarette off their balcony. It flew down and landed on a lower balcony. It just happened to be the balcony of a hoarder where there was lots of flammable material, and it caused a major fire. This was over on Wellesley, and some of the units were out of commission for months and months. So this report doesn't speak to how that would be contemplated. Moving forward, so when Chapter 354 amendments were recommended earlier this year, we were here front and center.
Wrap up.
All right. So what I just asked you for is to do a little bit of a deeper dive, to defer the decision today and engage in consultations about how this would affect things as noted in April.
Thank you, Daryl. Any questions? Seeing none? Thank you. Okay. Helen Chilas? Helen? Good afternoon, Helen.
Good afternoon. Thank you. My name is Helen Chillis, and I live in East York. I'm actually here on behalf of approximately 1,000 residents, 1501 Woodbine. We're synonymous. We're the second in line after 500 Dawes Road. And once again, I'm completely embarrassed that I'm here. I don't know where to start. First of all, I am most disappointed in this city. I'm disappointed that right now, what time is it? That we may get shut down in a few minutes. Sad. This is so important. It affects one half of the city of Toronto, of the citizens of the city. And we're only given a few moments. I have been here, and this has happened to me many times. I want my time back. I would like my time back. But let's move forward. The presentation today, I was most disappointed with. We've been waiting for a full, comprehensive report from property standards, and it took a few moments. We're talking about changing the law. I don't recall City Council even requesting an amendment to law. My understanding of the democratic process is completely different than what I have experienced within this council and these departments. There is no accountability, there is no transparency, and we want to talk about plans. I am the product of a plan. Our building was audited in 2009. Less than 5% was complied with, fulfilled, completed, case file closed. We had another building audit in 2013. The owners were given an additional 6-7 months. Nothing happened. They were ready probably to close a file until we stepped in and continued to advocate for our rights. They were taken to court. Fire violations, property standard violations. Is anyone here today aware that $25,000 was fined to the owners, our Sandco investment. That's nothing when they had millions of dollars to spend. So if it was me and I had a choice, spend millions or pay a few $1,000s in fines, I'd pay the few $1,000s in fines. Thank you very much. And I'm not even that type of person. But looking at the balance differential, and yet here today, my building passed by 72%. We were in the middle of construction, and yet we got 4 out of 5 for underground parking. Our balconies still weren't completed, yet we got 4 out of 5. We have a pool that hasn't been operational for over 10 years because public health shut it down. They didn't even bother to include that in their numbering system. There was an allocation of $60,000. Some of you, many of you, City Council, I recognize your faces, voted. It was almost unanimous. Last one, who is no longer a member of council. And $60,000 was allocated for tenant engagement. There was supposed to be a bid that went out, and some groups, some companies, someone was to go door to door and engage the public, tenants in apartment buildings. That never happened. But all I'm reading online is that some kind of handbook was developed for a multi-billion-dollar industry. My money, your money, because we all pay taxes. Why is this happening? The stories that I hear, right now we have a fire that happened on Thursday night. The equipment wasn't working. Yes, the smoke alarm, according to the family, wasn't working. Apparently, the fire department had their inspection back in March. We had our annual fire inspection by the company, by an external contractor, back in July. We have found out since that there was equipment that wasn't operational and it wasn't in the budget to repair and replace. And then the day that that was scheduled to be done, almost 3 months later, guess what Metcalf Living decided to do to us again? They canceled the replacement of fire life safety equipment, didn't give anyone notice. People had taken time off work, whatever the case may be. They didn't show at a door. They didn't apologize. They didn't do anything because they had received a heads up from the City of Toronto that they were coming the next afternoon.
I appreciate, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up. Any questions of the Deputant? Thank you, Helen. Thanks for joining us here. The last speaker is Santo Villafona.
I'm going to say this, and I need a few seconds here.
Helen, we really need to move on our agenda. I really apologize, but we need to get moving.
We, the people, need our voices, and we need our Tenant Action Committee back now.
Santo Villafona? Santo? Not here? Okay, that concludes the speakers for today. Any questions of staff? Okay, speakers, Councillor Matlow.
I've been obsessing about this for a long time. I've been thinking about this for days about what I was going to say here today. And given that we have councillors who need to leave in a minute, I'm going to simply say within 30 seconds, thank you to the St. Paul's Tenants Network. They were the ones who raised a number of the concerns that I'm bringing to your attention today, along with my colleague, Councillor Wong Tam. Thank you to Acorn for your ongoing advocacy. Thank you to staff. We have some differences of opinion that we are going to resolve because we need to work together to achieve results for the people who depend on us and trust us to achieve that, to achieve those results. And thank you all for, I believe, supporting the motion that you will hear in front of you in a moment.
Thank you so much, Councillor Matlow. Councillor Wong Tam.
Yes, thank you very much. And the motion that Councillor Matlow has wanted to move, I will take carriage of and thank him, as well as this extraordinary community of advocates who've come out today, and for the number who actually could not stay for the balance of the meeting, and for those who actually participated in feeding us the feedback to make sure that we were able to put it into language that could compel staff to do additional work. That's the motion from Councillor Matlow. It was also advanced circulated in his letter. I will now move my own motion which will, I think, largely complement the work that Councillor Matlow and the local community of advocates have been doing to see if we can actually do the very best we can to strengthen rent-safe TO. We all recognize that this is an early gate entry out of the door. There is much room for improvement, and I think we all need to recognize that. I think that one thing that I'm very encouraged by is that we're all energized and ready to make the pivot, to make the corrections, and we look forward to working with staff to make sure we can actually close those service gaps and actually meet the expectation of the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Do you want to speak?
Yeah, I'm going to refer item number 2 and Councillor Matlow's motions to the renovation subcommittee that's meeting on the 20th.
Okay, so and I have a motion. There's clearly some dialogue that needs to happen, and I hope to be privy of those conversations when we vote this at council. So I'm asking staff that from now until council engage with many of the residents associations, also engage with the landlord side of it on the recommendations at committee and the recommendations in front of us, and report back directly to council. Also that staff report back on some of these recommendations. We obviously all want to hear from them. We want to get their feedback, and I think it'll help the whole council understand how some of my colleagues' recommendations can be implemented, and make sure that we have your feedback on all this as we consider council. So I'll be asking to have that support for that motion. Okay, so we're going to be able to vote.
Sorry, Madam Chair. I think Councillor Fletcher wanted to refer portion.
Is that the first vote?
Recommendation number 2 out of the motion from Councillor Mallow. Is that correct? Yes. Okay, and we're going to vote on that separately.
Yes.
Is that correct?
So that will be the first vote. Can we vote on item 2 to the renovation that is meeting next week? Right. Okay. Okay. All those in favor? That carries. And now can we vote on motion A? All those in favor? And the remaining of motion B? And my motion. That carries. Item as amended. Okay, thank you. And committee is adjourned.